Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have a great show for you today. I'm Amber Duke, back at our table with Niall Standage.
Great to be with you, Amber. It has been a little while, so I'm glad to see you again.
It's nice to see you as well. How have you been?
I've been fine, thank you. I was off. My mother was visiting from Ireland, so that was nice. And otherwise off for a little while. I hope I'm not too rusty for our debates, but I'm looking forward to it.
I'm sure you'll be great. And plus, there's a lot of really interesting news stories today we're blessed to cover.
We definitely do. We have been blessed by the news gods with plenty of things to talk about, for sure.
Coming up on Rising, we'll discuss the latest in the Hamas-Israel ceasefire deal and President Trump's warning for the terrorist organization if they don't disarm.
Plus, the State Department has revoked the visas of foreign nationals who are accused of celebrating Charlie Kirk's death, raising free speech issues.
And HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s wife was on The View, and things got a bit testy.
But first, Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth getting some pushback from his own former employer, that's Fox News, over his new rules for the press.
Fox signed on to a statement from ABC, NBC, CBS, and CNN saying that none of them would agree to new Pentagon press rules, saying, quote, "The policy is without precedent and threatens core journalistic protections. So far, One American News has been the only media outlet to sign."
Despite the pushback, Hegseth and the Pentagon still insist that the new rules are a reasonable request in the interests of national security. But retired General Jack Keane rejected that idea on Fox News last night.
What they're really doing, they want to spoon feed information to the journalists, and that will be their story. That's not journalism. Journalism is going out and finding the story and getting all the facts to support it. And no one's going to walk in and bang on a door of a four-star general or senior civilian policy leader in the Pentagon. I never had that, but I did have journalists chasing a story of something that was going on in the Army, and those things were legitimate.
But Department spokesperson Sean Parnell says the claim that the Pentagon wants to spoon-feed stories is a lie. He writes on X, "It should come as no surprise that the mainstream media is once again misrepresenting the Pentagon's press procedures. Let's be absolutely clear. Journalists are not required to clear their stories with us. This claim is a lie. Have an escort in sensitive areas. Wear a press credential. Don't encourage our people to violate Department of War policy. Pretty simple." And some on the right say that they agree. Eric Doherty of Florida Voice News posted this to X after the Associated Press and New York Times refused to sign Monday, writing in part, "Okay, kick them out. Access to the Pentagon without basic security measures is not a right."
The deadline to acknowledge Hegseth's new rules was yesterday, and for those who have not signed, he has promised to evict them from the building today. So I think this is really an interesting story, Amber. We should, I think, in the interest of full transparency, say The Hill has declined to sign and the Daily Caller, your news organisation, has also declined to sign. It's only One American News that has signed up. I was kidding offline about welcoming you to the resistance and all of that, but to be a bit more serious, I actually do think it is to the credit of the Daily Caller, of Fox News, and a couple of other conservative-leaning outlets that they have declined to sign this policy, which I certainly see as a heavy-handed attempt to essentially prohibit reporters from reporting all but the most acceptable or cleared news.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the problem with the policy is that it goes way too far. I think it's understandable that the Pentagon wants to prevent leaks of classified information, but that's a question of making sure your own employees are not doing that, not of trying to hamstring the press. And my understanding, I have not been a Pentagon reporter, is that the hallway that they are asking reporters to get escorted around has always been open for the press to roam freely, and it even is apparently labeled that it's basically the reporter's
corridor,
the press corridor.
Right.
So basically, to go from the briefing room to the office where all of the press desks are set up, they now have to have an official walking with them. And in addition, it says not just that classified leaks are prohibited, but that the press is not allowed to report on any classified or unclassified information that is not approved by a Pentagon official. So I was just thinking, well, what would this mean for previous major national security stories. When Edward Snowden did his infamous leaks proving that the NSA was spying on Americans, the press would, if they published that under this policy, be prohibited from further accessing the Pentagon. And so that's really the danger here in restricting that type of reporting.
Right. And to that point, I think that a lot of the purported security concerns that the Pentagon and Pete Hegseth are claiming here were already honoured by news organisations in previous iterations before this policy. So this idea, for example, that the press was sort of roaming into areas where they were not permitted, and this sort of rather dramatic image of the media as if they're just sort of sneaking into people's offices. That was not happening. Reporters at the Pentagon wear badges as it is to identify themselves. There have been numerous instances in the past where news organizations have discovered things that are classified and have had discussions with the administration of the day as to whether they can permissibly report that without endangering people's lives. And that's, of course, a valid concern. But this seems to me a lot more about chilling genuine reporting and trying to control access in a way that infringes not only on press freedom, but on the public's right to know what this organisation that has massive funding is of massive importance is actually doing.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And this is not the first time that we have seen an administration try to curtail press freedom. During the previous administration, there were 400 hard passes to the White House that were revoked from various press organizations and individuals. And then, of course, there was the scandalous Obama administration spying on journalists who were reporting on similar information. So, although not without precedent, obviously concerning. And I think the fact that there's only been one outlet that's signed on to this and that is going to be present in the Pentagon is probably going to force them to rethink this, because whatever type of coverage you want, whether it's positive or negative, and sometimes administrations, don't mind negative coverage if it means that what they're doing is getting out to the public, or that they're getting some attention for what's going on. As some would say, all press is good press. Well, in this case, there's potentially no press.
Right, and I wonder how that's going to be received by President Trump, actually, because for all his blasts at the media, he loves media attention.
Right.
And the fact that this has gone so far where organizations like your own, like Fox News, are declining to sign and therefore will presumably be barred from going there, what impact will that have? I also think it looks pretty bad for One American News to be the sole people who have signed up to this. So I think that's part of the picture as well. As far as previous administrations, I think it's fair to raise all those issues. I would have bigger problems with the Obama era spying or surveillance. The issue of press passes in the last administration was a bit cloudy to me because it wasn't clear whether those were people who were simply not showing up to use those passes. I'm not persuaded that was viewpoint discrimination or an attempt to silence the press, but certainly it is valid to cite previous examples.
Yeah, I think one of the bigger concerns actually during the Biden administration, in addition to the revocation of White House hard passes, was they had a very restrictive COVID policy when it came to attending press briefings. So it was very difficult for smaller outlets to be able to attend. So at the time I was working for The Spectator, we were basically a startup in the United States, and yet we were expected to pay for a daily COVID test at a cost of $150 just to be able to access the briefing room, which obviously was prohibitively expensive for us. And so sometimes these rules that are seemingly done for the reason of public health or what have you ended up disproportionately punishing outlets who do not have these massive budgets or are not owned by corporations or billionaires.
Raising the bar for access without saying
Exactly.
so. Yeah, fair enough.
All right, coming up, President Trump is vowing that Hamas will disarm, and if they don't, there may be violent consequences. We'll be right back.